Why does pelvic floor muscle dysfunction happen? We don't want it, right? Okay, so there's some common causes that we're going to go through that have a huge impact on the pelvic floor muscles. This list is not all inclusive, so there are many other scenarios where there are issues that can cause pelvic floor muscle dysfunction, but I'm going to go over some of the most common causes that we see. Some of the most common causes are pregnancy, childbirth, pelvic floor muscle stretching, pelvic floor muscle tearing and trauma, risk factors like smoking, diabetes, and obesity. And then other common causes are menopause, prostate surgery, pelvic surgeries, trauma, and more. Here is the side view of a female body. And here she is not pregnant. So remember, this is the belly in the front. Here's the bottom. Here's the tailbone and the spine going up. This is the bladder, and this is where urine exits. Here's the uterus and the vaginal canal, and then the rectum and the anal canal where poop and gas exit. Here is a full uterus. So this is a baby here, and you can see what happens to that pelvic floor muscle, those pelvic floor muscles. And look at what happens to the bladder and the rectum too. Everything gets squished, all right? And the pelvic floor muscles have to carry a lot of weight. So you can see here where they're kind of in a better position. Here they're getting stretched from the weight of that pregnant baby, pregnant uterus. Here's an example of this, like a little infographic that I like to share. So here's the baby and here's the pelvic floor. So as the baby grows, the pelvic floor gives. The baby grows bigger and the pelvic floor gives more. The baby grows bigger and the pelvic floor gives even more. So there, many times people will say, oh, well, I've had a C-section. So I don't, my pelvic floor is clear. Well, you still were pregnant, right? And you still had all those changes that your body went through as a result of pregnancy. So you can still have pelvic floor dysfunction. You can have pelvic floor dysfunction and not be pregnant. So, there was a research study showing that 40% of teenage girls that had never had babies, had never been pregnant, had some kind of urine leakage. So it's way, way, way more common than we think. And you don't have to have a baby to have pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. Then we have childbirth, so vaginal delivery. Here is a view from below. So we're looking into the pelvis, we're at the feet, and we're looking into the pelvis here. This is the pubic bone. Here's the vaginal canal. Here are your beautiful pelvic floor muscles. Remember, you have multiple muscles. And here's the baby. Now watch what happens during a vaginal delivery with that baby as the baby comes through the vaginal canal. Those pelvic floor muscles need to stretch. Look at that incredible stretch that happens with the pelvic floor muscles. Pelvic floor muscles stretch up to 3.78 times their resting length. So imagine this. Let's say you have your bicep here, attaches from your elbow to your shoulder, right? And let's say you took that bicep and you stretched it 4 times its resting length. Most muscles would rupture at that point. The pelvic floor muscles are expected to do that. Sometimes they do have issues, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but sometimes people will have a vaginal delivery and have no tearing, but those muscles still stretched. So to expect that you just automatically pop back after you've had that much of a stretch of your pelvic floor muscles, and we don't spend the time and attention that we need to rehabbing these muscles. So let's keep going. Before we go over the types of tearing, I just want to orient you here on the anatomy. So this is that same view. We're looking into her pelvis from the feet. Here is the pubic bone up here. This would be the tailbone. Here are the buttocks. This is the anus where poop and gas come out. Here's the vaginal opening where a baby would come out with a vaginal delivery. Here's the urethra where urine comes out, and then that's the clitoral hood there and the clitoris underneath. This area right here is called the perineal body. And this is where the majority of tears happen. Other tears can happen. So you can have a tear into your labia. You can have a tear that goes into the vaginal canal. You can have tears that go up towards the urethra and even up towards the clitoris. But the majority of tears happen down here. Here is a little, I guess, graphic of the same thing that we were just looking at. So there's the anus, this is the perineal body, this is the vaginal opening, the urethra opening for pee, and that's the clitoris. And here are the labia. This has no tearing, okay? So you can see no tearing. This is a grade 1 tear. So it's a superficial tear. There are no muscular tears that are involved in a grade 1. Here's a grade 2 tear. So with this tear, there are actually the pelvic floor muscles, those superficial muscles tear. And depending on the depth of the grade 2 and the length of the grade 2, you could even have some deeper involvement of the muscles. So you can have a small grade 2, or you could have a grade 2 that comes all the way back just up to the anus, to the external, right before the external anal sphincter muscles. When those external anal sphincter muscles, the ones that wrap around the anus, when those are involved, that automatically bumps it to a grade 3. So here's a grade 3, and those external anal sphincter muscles are involved, and it's tearing into the anus. And then a grade 4 is tearing into the anus, into the rectum, and these two are considered severe tears. There are some fantastic guidelines that were released by the from Australia, from the OBGYN Association in Australia. And I'll put a link here in the course so that you can check it out. They are fantastic. So they're called the 3rd and 4th degree perineal tear prevention clinical care standards. And so it's a 40+ page document. It's really made for providers. So if you're a provider, I definitely encourage you to download that, look at it. But even if you aren't a provider and you're someone that wants to be pregnant again, or that has friends that are going to be pregnant or family members, check that out, because it really gives you a lot of helpful resources on how to prevent 3rd and 4th degree tears. Because as you can see, those are severe tears that have a significant impact on your pelvic floor muscles. And remember how important our pelvic floor muscles are to our quality of life, with bowel function, bladder function, sexual function, movement. So we want to prevent those if possible. And then if they do occur, then they also have some tips on how to care for them. So I would definitely encourage you to check those out. There's another type of pelvic floor muscle trauma that can occur, and we're going to go over that. This is a view from above. So this is kind of a new view. Remember, if we have that bowl and we're looking into the bowl from above, that's what we're looking at. Here is the pubic bone. Here's the tailbone, and you have this is the deeper layer of pelvic floor muscles that we're seeing here. This is the opening where the baby exits, okay? And then this is the perineal body. Well, these are the underlying muscles with that perineal body. So remember, if that perineal body, because that's the vaginal opening and here's the anus there, if that perineal body is torn, remember, a grade 1 tear would be very superficial. Grade 2 would be, varying. Grade 3 would go all the way here, and grade 4 is going all the way in here. So you can imagine the effect that those tears happen. But then check this out. So you have this pelvic floor muscle that attaches here, right behind the pubic bone, and then it stretches around the anus, and it comes and attaches to the other side of the pubic bone. And so you can see here, these muscles are intact. Now here is that same view, but you can see these muscles have torn. And this would be called a levator ani avulsion. So you can see there's tearing there. I have a lot of resources on this. There's a whole webinar on Levator anti-avulsions. I think I can link it here. So if you want to check that out, I'll put it there. It's also included in our Pelvic Flicks platform. So Pelvic Flicks is kind of like Netflix for the pelvic floor. And for a small monthly fee, you can watch all these videos at no additional charge. You just have this monthly fee. So if you're interested, I'll put that link here as well if you want to learn more about Levator anti-avulsions. As you can imagine, a Levator anti-avulsion can have a significant impact on your pelvic floor health and is a very big risk factor for pelvic organ prolapse. And with Levator avulsions, you can have varying degrees of tears. You know, of course, it's not going to be everyone tears in exactly the same way and in exactly the same spot. You can have a smaller tear, you can have a bigger tear, you can have a bilateral tear, and much more. So just know that that's out there and that it exists. So I think awareness is the first step towards health and towards recovery. All right, some of those other risk factors we talked about, like menopause, prostate surgery, pelvic surgeries, trauma, all of those, as you can imagine, can also impact the pelvic floor and the pelvic floor muscles and overall pelvic health. So just being aware of that. There are scenarios where people have none of these things and they still have some pelvic health dysfunction. What we're seeing a lot of is people holding tension in their pelvic floor muscles. It might be from stress. It might be from a hip injury. It might be from low back. There might be orthopedic causes for it. There might be other causes for it. There might be even some hormonal things going on. So definitely, if you're having any of those symptoms that we talked about with bowel, bladder, sexual health, pelvic pain, or pelvic pressure, definitely these are warning signs to you that, hey, something is going on and you don't have to live with that. There are things that you can do to help improve your quality of life and to do what you love with who you love without pain, pressure, or leaks. Thank you for being here. Make sure you share this with someone. I appreciate you.